Welcome back. Joining us in studio is Representative Tom Newell from District 28, who's currently serving as chairman of the Human Services Committee for the Oklahoma House of Representatives. Representative Newell, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here this morning.
Let's start off with where Travis just left the discussion. You heard him talking about Texas. So Texas is a destination of job creators. Why is that?
Well, I think it's very clear, as Travis mentioned, during the recession, Texas created more than half of all the jobs created in the United States. Since the recession, they're number 2, only behind North Dakota because of the shale revolution. Obviously, it's about income taxes. It's about the business environment. There are some things that we can't compete with. We can't have a port city like Houston. But we do need to look at those other things that we can compete with and say, we need to do these things so we can get in on that job creation with them.
So what does all this mean for Oklahoma?
Well, it's very clear. As Travis pointed out, we're losing jobs to Oklahoma. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Dallas Morning News was bragging about stealing some of our jobs. Hilti Tools moving their corporate headquarters from Tulsa to Oklahoma down to Dallas. So, we see that both with large and small, and we've got to do everything we can to keep jobs here. But again, as people are moving from, New York and California and other places, they look at Texas, but why can't they also look at Oklahoma and consider us as well?
One of the biggest criticisms that we hear at the Capitol every year, and when folks talk about the income tax situation with Texas, and Travis even mentioned this, was property taxes. What does this comparison mean? And if that's the case and there's higher property taxes there, how come they're still growing so much and companies are still going there?
Well, the simple answer is because the overall tax burden per capita is still lower. In Oklahoma, people, they pay that property tax bill every year. They write a check, so it's very real to them, and they're scared to death about property taxes going up. And that's one of the large arguments we always hear here. Well, if we lower income tax, we're going to raise property taxes. Well, first of all, even if the state legislature wanted to do that, we can't. They have to vote on their property taxes at the local level. But it's just not true that taxes, they're going to pay more when they move down there. They don't pay income tax. They don't pay taxes on groceries. So what they're paying more in property tax, they're more than saving in other areas.
So the math works out at the end of the
absolutely.
day, people, and that's why they're
again, corporate CEOs that are moving down there aren't going to move down there to pay more in taxes. They've done the math.
So let's talk about Oklahoma and moving forward and what you've heard at the Capitol and what you think is going to come up next year regarding this topic.
Well, one thing is, the lobbyists for tax consumers are always louder and more equipped, better prepared than just the average person that's out working every day and paying their taxes. So we always have to overcome that to begin with. But with the help of people like Travis, who have the data so black and white for us, we need to continue to make the case that, listen, Texas isn't going to change. Kansas is lowering theirs, as he mentioned. Missouri is lowering theirs. There are several governors running now that are probably going to win. That part of their platform is lowering taxes in their state. And so we have to understand that we are in competition with these other states. And if we want to have a thriving economy going into the future, we have to keep our tax burdens low. And on top of that, the Supreme Court, it's looking like they might overturn our tax cuts. So we might have a lot of work to do when we get back in the legislature.
This is interesting. You bring up this point, and it seems like every year, the closer you get to the Capitol, all the conversation is about revenue and how much revenue the state has and that it needs to be more and more. I'm interested when you go back in your district or you go around the state and you talk with the small business owner or you talk with the family that's trying to make the numbers work at home. Is there a different conversation you're hearing? Do we have that happening in the state right now?
There's definitely a different conversation. And, your average constituent, your average person, it reminds me of a joke. We just celebrated Columbus Day a few weeks ago. Everyone says that if Columbus were around the day, he'd be one of the best government bureaucrats ever. So, well, why is that? Well, when he left, he didn't know where he was going. When he got here, he didn't know where he was. When he went back, he didn't know where he'd been. And he did it all with someone else's money. And I think that's the view. Everyone looks at government, and they just understand that government, by its very nature, is inefficient with dollars. And so when they hear about, some agency needing more money, they instinctively know that there's probably a place that they could cut and become more efficient rather than just getting more money in. But the other thing is also true, and it's been proven over and over again, when you cut taxes and make a better business environment long term, overall your revenue rates go up, they don't go down.
Last question here. Let me ask you, over under going into next legislative session. We're coming out of a big election year. probably will still have the same majority set in each legislative body as you do today. Tax cuts have been a major conversation. Do you think this will be one of the major topics and folks might see something done? A question probably folks at home have.
I can promise you that myself and some other colleagues that I serve with is at the top of our agenda, and we will do everything that we can. And hopefully the governor will get on board, and we'll continue to create a friendly environment for business in Oklahoma.
Representative Newell, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for your
so much.
leadership in the state. Still ahead, we'll discuss some key questions prior to Tuesday's election. We'll be right back.